So the kind of social isolation was greatly affected who and what I became, in terms of I began to cocoon myself. But there was the other side of me which said, you have to fight. No walls would make you imprisoned. So I fought that, and that is how I became self-reliant, independent, resilient, and I fought all forms of oppression thereafter. So that was some of the ways in which the early part of the banning orders were. But there was also what was called threats, death threats. And I don't know how many of you knew about Rick Turner. Well, Rick Turner was killed, shot by the police as he opened the front door. Previous to that, we were very close friends. He was a political scientist at the University of KwaZulu-Natal now. And after his death, I used to get death threats. And one of the threats was the phone would ring and there would be a whole lot of noises on the phone, and the voice would say, remember Rick Turner, you next. And it used to be absolutely scary, and I would wait until the footsteps on the corridors of the building that I lived would peter out, and then I would fall on the floor and keep myself absolutely still and wait for those footsteps to disappear. But then the worst thing happened one day when they loosened the bolts and nuts of my car. And as I was driving down Springfield Road, which is a very steep road, in the middle of the morning traffic at 8 o'clock, the wheels came out and I geared myself straight towards the pavement, towards a huge tree, and nearly collided into the tree. And it was then that I decided I was never going back to the police to tell them, because they were the perpetrators of the acts of violence, and I was not going to go and tell them what had happened to me, because I knew they would be there as watchful eyes over me day in and day out, because my banning order in 1978 was coming to an end. This happened in 78. But I was forced to do that. And the person who was in the police station with me was a person by the name of Harold Strachan, who passed away a few weeks ago. And he also had death threats, and he also came in to explain the situation. They thought that we had made a plan, but we were both banned persons, and banned people could not communicate with each other. But he had a very similar experience. And how could two bad people? And then we also discovered that he was also on the list of being threatened, of his life being threatened. So those were the kinds of things that happened to us when we fought against the system, the kind of violence that we had to live through, the violence that you see on June 16th, 1976. It was that kind of violence that perpetuated itself throughout our years. In 1980, 1984, when the children saw their parents, and I think Kanya used to be there when we visited with people out in the South Coast, when the children under bed saw, because of violence between political groupings like the ANC and the Inkatha Freedom Party, and how they were witnesses to their parents being slaughtered. All that kind of violence we had to live through. We are saying that this is the kinds of things that are happening now are what children had seen from the time they were born, and that violence had been submerged. It is an anger that has now arisen. It was never addressed. There was no therapeutic intervention for any form of kind of so-called rehabilitation. You had to live with it, and you had to make sure that you had to survive it. And what we see today are the survivors of our children who went through that horrendous period of the violent apartheid past. So I think I'm going to stop there, because as I said, as we said, the personal is political and the political is personal, and therefore we say, a luta continua, the struggle continues, and we will fight on. Thank you.
We'll right ahead. Our last presentation is from Roadway. He's a full-time PhD student registered under ICON at DUT. His research topic is utilizing action research to build peace at Kwezi village. He grew up staying in different areas affected by violent conflict, which are, I think you will pronounce it, Mnguni, and the rest. He is a former commissioner and chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality and currently chairperson of the Barry Trust. Go ahead then. You want me to?
Yeah, please.
Why is it the Simone? Where are you? Oh, we never considered that possibility.
Good afternoon. Whilst Simone is setting up, I'm Mfano Zolo, as they explained, and I grew up in a number of different areas which were affected by violence. Let me just all protocol observe, and it's always interesting to listen to our foremothers and forefathers actually traveled this when we're still very young. And thank you very much for contribution. Who are here because of you. But I must also say this, that in South Africa, they've spoken about separate development, which we had whites at the top, and in terms of the apartheid government, they had Indians, the coloureds, and they were Africans. And we had in Parliament 2010 a three-cameral parliament, and Africans were dumped in the rural areas. I happened to be the one who grew up in the dumping site in those different rural areas. Even Africans themselves were categorized in terms of different ethnic groups. I'm a Zulu, so they are Xhosas, they are Tswanas, and so on. They have their own self-governing states. In that, it was also valuable because ethnic groups themselves had to fight. For example, there was a war in Bambai between the Africans, between the Zulus and the Xhosas, or Amampo. Another one in Malugazi between the Zulus and the Xhosas, and those Xhosas moved to Inanda, and they had to actually drive and fight the Indians in Inanda. So there was this war that was actually carrying on. The apartheid government confused everyone, wanted everyone to fight. So that they won't focus on the issues of human rights, they would focus on fighting themselves. So that was very, 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 very critical as well. So, and in most cases, as a person who grew up in the rural areas, I don't even know how I'm here because I grew up looking after cattle and goats and so on. So I found my way to be able to actually to be educated. So those are very, very critical issues that you must also raise. So in the rural areas, no one was considering rural areas. There's not little reports about what was happening there. Now I'm writing my studies about Jobogas. There are only 3 articles about Jobogas from 1940 to date. 3 articles. One is about a mobile clinic, and another one is about someone who's actually raising goods there. That's it. But about more than 200 people were killed through violence there. It's not even recorded. The police don't even have the fights for those people. So that's apartheid for you. So I'll just share my experience of apartheid. I think I'll just concentrate on that because I think my colleagues have actually made analysis on a number of issues. My experience, I grew up in Umbumbulu, and there was faction fighting between the Shange clan and the Bengu clan. Then I had to stop schooling for 1 year. During this fight, we were to hide, sleeping in the bush. I was very young, I was 7 years old at the time. And also sleep in remote people's houses where there were no roads and so on. Scores of men were killed there. In the process of that, I lost my maternal grandfather, who was killed by this violence. As a young boy, I was exposed to violence, guns, and language of war. You know, sometimes as young boys would be even asked to go and pick up a homemade gun somewhere and bring it to the homestead. So that's how we grew up, transporting some guns and so on as young boys and so on. Because we grew up in the language of war, then we are so socialized in war as well. And then, because of that faction fighting, then my mother was married to Shozi, so had to move to the Shozi homestead, which was in Jobogas, another village. So then at Jobogas as well, another faction fighting broke up. And in that one, I lost 2 years of schooling. And I lost a number of family members, the Shozis, including my sister, was associated in that particular violence. So, in 1985, there's a connection between 1985, it was a very high intense political era in South Africa. COSATU was also formed there. Politics was really high and violence was intensified. The ANC was also ensuring that, and the UTF, ensuring that there was intense political discussions as well as mobilization of people to actually overthrow apartheid. And as what is also important is that in Joboga as a people, because they were good in faction fighting and shooting, we were recruited in areas like Hammersdale, areas like Isiping and so on, to go and actually shoot and come back and also get guns from different political parties. Remember that in 1980, the ANC and the IFP, the African National Congress, as well as the Inkatha Freedom Party, did not see eye to eye. And also there was political problems between the two parties. So that also intensified violence. So faction fighting that in Joboga was also affected by political issues and how people were actually wanting to actually entrench political issues in those particular areas. There was violence in Joboga. It was a large number of people could not stand that, including my family. We had to move to another area, which is in Roadway now, which is about 120 km out from there. So scores of families moved, and the area of the roads was left vacant, but there were some people who were still there. So when we arrived in the area, because we were influenced by political discussions in Hammersdale and other areas, so we became ANC, my family members. So again, in the midst of majority of people in Inkatha Freedom Party members. So even there, we stayed there for 3 years, and then another violence, political party violence, came into being. So, yeah, and then I think we did not, after that we felt that we were going to move, and we did not, even now still in my rural home is still in Ndwedwe. That is Ndwedwe. Then there was political violence among the Ntlabakanye community, Mangala, and Tulini villages and so on. But I finished my schooling in Mnguni, and Mbusi stays there, knows that there was violence as well around 1989 and 1990, 1991. So, but I finished my schooling there. So in my home and my uncle's home were completely destroyed. You see, there are effects of apartheid violence. You know. I think all of us will see, but what is also more important is that there was no police present. They would only come to pick up dead bodies. They could not come and maintain law and order. And you remember we had a minister of law and order and so on. So they would only come after that effect, because there was no one. I think the apartheid government was happy to see black people killing each other. So they would only come, and they did not even want to resolve those issues, more especially in the rural areas. Now I think police and soldiers perpetrated violence in a number of ways. There were new forms of violence that are now, I think my sister has spoken to that now, how I'm experiencing violence, you know. There's sexual violence, there's attack on foreign nationals, there's burning of trucks and land invention, there's political killings during local government elections, there's intra-political party violence. What is also coming up now? Before it was violence, it was inter-party violence, but now it's becoming intra-party violence, where people from the same party will kill each other for positions of power. So now we're approaching local government next year. Watch the space. The issue of ward councillors. We'll find that people will be killing each other for political positions. You know, issue of tenders and so on. So now violence has changed, but it's still the same. You know why? Because this is very important. That's my own analysis. Is that we're not used to issues of power and state power. We're not trained on this. It's the first time having some little money that you have that you can manage and the resources and so on. That's why people are fighting. So I think even the ready to govern document by the ANC never anticipated this on how we're going to actually try. And other people who are in these positions, they're not even educated. So for them, it's a life and death. For me to be a councillor, I must be a councillor until I retire, because that's the only source of income that I'm going to have. If you come and compete with me, then I must actually eliminate you. And also the issue of tenders and so on. We also see service delivery process linked to political violence. So we're also seeing all this as another violence. And what we are seeing as a country is negative peace. And we find that people always say we have peace, but it's very, very negative. It can't be sustained and so on. What is the impact of violence? And for me, our houses were destroyed in rural areas. For example, in Jobogazi, people are only coming back now. From 1989 to date, about 400 households. Crispin and I went to that village. About 500 households moved to that area, only coming back now, and the area is vacant. Citizens are traumatized, economically, socially, and emotionally. So, for example, in my PhD study, I have an intervention program. I've actually engaged the healing of memories to go to the community, to engage them so that they can heal their memories about violence. Although it's a process, but you are starting down, but we can really see that they're affected by violence. There's a resulting disinvestment. Because of that area of violence and so on, there's no proper routes. I was traveling with Crispin and said, no, let's go back now. I could see that the road was becoming more and more bad for him. And no one is interested in investing in an area where there was violence. Low levels of poverty. People are not educated. Even in one of the participants, when I engaged with them, they said, we lost a lot of schooling, we did not go to school and so on. Affect development sensitive and communities, especially instability of the country. What is also critical, what I'm picking up, is that where there were communities, like Njobogazi, Umsinga, and so on, was rampant violence. Those people, they become tent hitmen. They come here and they are hired by highly educated people like us to go and kill other people. So they become professional killers. You go to hostels, for example, and it's not in the community. When you go to any rural community, we know who are killers. We know what they call themselves Izinka, Oxley.
Goons or hitmen.
Yeah, the hitmen. They call themselves Izinka. So, and these are made from these communities where they've been violent. These hitmen came from there because they don't have a source of income, they get hired. So if we are powerful like Crispin, your head will cost about 500,000. So my head maybe will cost about 20,000. Another head will cost about 70,000. So they know.
these hitmen, and they come from these communities, and they know. And the intelligence services, I don't think that they don't know some of these things because they're there. So this violence is creating professional killers who will perpetually continue to kill people. For example, a very good example is, I think it was 1918 and 1990, Izinkabi hitmen went to the High Court in Durban and killed people in the witness stand. And that case, and those people were sentenced and so on. But that's what violence would. They guts to go where they know there are police officers, there's everyone. But because I cannot get you in the witness stand, I would come with my AK-47 and kill you. You know? So this is what this apartheid has done to us. We spoke about intergenerational violence, the culture of violence in the country and so on. The other issue that has sort of come up is the issue of, they call it in my research, it's called Ubuntu, but there's this thing about violence, more especially in rural areas, the issue of conquest. You know, people would believe that even in the tax industry, for the power, for me to be in power and in control, I must conquer you. So the only person who's going to actually rule the taxi industry is the one who conquers. So for me to be in power, I must kill all of you, so that all of you will be subjected to my own instructions and rule and control. So the issue of conquest has become very, very critical. Yeah, and lots of productivity and so on. I've spoken about some of those things. Yeah, nowadays, what is the impact? For example, now in Jobogas, what is coming up as part of violence. People, there's no, I would call it, there's no overt violence. But people are stealing cows, there are about bodies that are found, they're killed and so on. But the community, they've started a vigilante group called Isikebe. Isikebe is a group that when you steal my cow, we'll call you, we'll sit around, we'll hit you until you tell us who else steals cow in the community. You know, the community will come. So we can really see how violence is now inflicted. They don't call the police to come and arrest the person stealing the cow, but they hit this person until you tell them who else is actually, how are they actually managing the issue, this thing of actually stealing cows and so on. Then Isikebe comes from the word boat. Isikebe is a boat, so they move around the community to find those people who are actually stealing cows. Violence in the hostels, I've spoken about that. The issue of conquest, I've spoken about that. The transmission spread of violence. You know, the hiring of these people. We find that those people who have been fighting Mbumbu as a community, when they move and recycle to another area, that area is going to become problematic because they're used to this thing of violence. I think I've spoken about the creation of Izinkabi and widows. I think we have spoken about that, some of my colleagues. I think it's about building peace and so on. So, but in a nutshell is that the impact of this violence, whether in the rural areas, it's enormous. You know, in rural areas, people, they report at least about them, what is happening in their schools and so on. So poverty thrives in a particular area. In the area where I'm researching, Jobogas, about 15% of people have matric. You know, 15%. Even there, and they still live. You won't even tell that those people, for them to get to Durban is about 35 kilometers. But they still have young people who don't even finish matric, who do their own things, they still do their own traditional things and so on. So it's really, really, so for them, they want to resolve things through conflict. You know, there's a case study, for example, where a family, they suspected another child of actually stolen a cell phone. The mother, the father, and everyone went to the road and they stopped that child, they hit that child, they even took her cell phone and so on. You can really see that the type of violence, and for people to be able to solve some of these problems is through hitting, is through actually inflicting violence to other people. So I think that's my experience about what apartheid has done, especially in the rural areas, about ensuring that we stay there, we become violent, we don't grow, and we just look after cattle, and we send people to town so they can able to actually reproduce the system of oppression. Thank you very much.
So, you've heard some gut-wrenching stories thus far. You probably have some questions or comments we will welcome. And if you have any of these, can we ask you to keep them as short and crisp as possible so that we can get through more. If there are fewer, then obviously you'll have more time. But okay, anyone wants to ask questions? Yes. Okay, let's take 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
So like few mentioned being affected by in terms of legal sense. So what's the house ban, house arrest, and then the military service. Has there been any changes in the law to amend? So like I know, just like let's say I want to travel, you have this on your record. I mean, things are changing. Are they making changes in the law to wipe your slate clean from that time period?
Let's just take the question and then we come back, right? And you know who the questions are directed at, right? Okay.
What I'd like to say is that the presentation was quite triggering, and it shows that we come from far as a country. And it's been close to 25 years since liberation now, and it is still impossible to look at us as a black people without referring back to apartheid. And yes, the current generation, we are evidence on the consequences of apartheid. So my question goes to Nokuthula. As she had talked about that, the circumstances, she said that the circumstances of apartheid shouldn't have eroded our Ubuntu, and that being our the core principles of our identity. But how? How do we uphold the principles of Ubuntu when it is the same philosophy that has been allowing for black people to be taken advantage of and be stolen from? Our principles of giving, kindness, and peace have led the black woman today to be open to being raped and killed at any given time of the day without any justice. We are angry and we are bitter and we are tired. So how do we become the change and resistance in such a cruel system and still uphold the principles of Ubuntu?
Who was next there? Oh, there you go. We've got one more mic. And who's the other one?
Just listening to each of your contributions, reflecting on those contributions myself, it's clear to me that there are still, to this day, effects, flow-on effects from the apartheid era. My question is this: what now? What next?
Okay, thank you so much to the panelists for the moving and really personal experiences. Appreciate. My question also kind of stems from the previous ones that were asked, and I'm also just drawing it from what this conference is titled, Reimaging Peace. And I'm wondering, from the intergenerational violence that was spoken about, the language of war, the question that Nokuthula asked about what kind of a man, and the gender-based violence accounts that were reflected on from the many women that have already died. And also just what Mbusi shared with regards to the where townships are today and the unchanging nature of townships and young people feeling hopeless. So my question really is, can we reimagine peace, or do we need to come to terms with the discord and conflicts that exist in our society? And yeah, that's my question.
Okay, go ahead. Sam, you want to start? I think the first question was to you.
You wanted to know if there has been any changes in terms of one's movements. According to the law, yes, there is. The Constitution talks about the freedom of expression, the freedom of movement. We hope that there would have been a time when there would be no barriers, but there are barriers. And the barriers we are facing, some of the barriers we are facing today, has resulted in the arrival of people from our neighboring countries. And hence, we have what's called, we are regarded as foreigners. Now, I mean terms like that, foreigners, refugees, they're all demeaning and demoralizing. Yes, you need to have work permits. You're not allowed over a particular period of time. The kind of stringency in terms of applications when you go to these government offices, the kind of manner in which you are treated is what we are saying that there is the ability. I didn't, for one, there was a period of time when I didn't have a passport to leave the country. And it took something like 10 years before they considered that I was able to be given a passport. But those laws have changed. But the present crisis is the freedom of movement and the ability to be regarded as not a foreigner, but in terms of the continent of Africa, for instance, to be regarded as being part of the African continent and being accepted as being African in the land of your birth, which is Africa. And that has not yet changed. So there are other issues that are social issues that have arisen out of this. And I suppose that is why there is so much of prohibition. But the manner in which people are treated over documentation is inhuman. I don't know if that answers your question.
So my question was more to cleaning your slate. So to the gentleman for watching, I'm sorry, but you were in the military prison for a year. You had the 5-year ban. It was a crime that's now on your record. Has there been any moves in the laws for people affected, such as yourselves, to have that expand so that you have a clean slate during that time period?
That's an interesting question. Partly because, for instance, in my case, and possibly in Sam's as well, we were never charged in a criminal court. So we don't have a criminal record, a police record as such. Mine was a military court. I was also detained twice, and they called it detention without trial. So we had no access to lawyers, we were not charged, etc., etc. So oddly enough, there's not a police record. I have travelled subsequently internationally without any problems, applying for visas and so on, including nowadays Schengen visas, which is very strict to get a Schengen visa and states. But yeah, so that's from our point of view. Possibly people who had offences related to the past books, they were charged in magistrates' courts and so on. I don't know whether that follows them around. Yeah.
Okay, are you okay? Nokuthula, Ubuntu?
Ubuntu, it's a very difficult line to toe. But, okay, sorry. Microphone. It's a very difficult line to toe. But I want us to look back at the lives of the Madibas, the people who went through the foreigner trialists, and what Mama Hussein has shared with us, the issue of Steve Biko. Actually, one of the things that Steve Biko said when the heat was on, he was right in the thick of things, and he knew that these people were going to kill him, but he did it anyway. He continued with the black consciousness. And one of my favorite quotes of his said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we really should have taken heed of such things, that the apartheid regime was a system, and it was entrenched, and it took a very long time. We in the midst of the heat of things, we should have, I know it was difficult, but we should, because there were people who were consciously reminding us, and there were people who were walking behind us, who were walking the talk. Maybe we should have taken a leaf out of that and try, at least try. Because the reason why we are perishing now as a nation, we are doing these things to each other, is because of other people. But we are hurting ourselves. We are shooting ourselves in the foot because of the things that what other people did to us. So what I'm saying is that we really have to rise up. Let's build our resilience. Let's relook at ourselves and try and rebuild ourselves back to where we started as Abantu, and restore the culture of Ubuntu, because that's the only thing that will stop this intergenerational violence, this killing of each other, this is the Gabi, that because we are breeding violence. It's proliferating like wildfire. It requires us to step back and reflect and look at what is it, how do we fix this, because we have to fix it, we have to face it. My young son here talked about something very profound, that we don't have a culture of talking just for the sake of talking, we react. All this thing that is happening right now, the violence that is happening, is reactionary. We are reacting. We are not like taking a step back and what is it that is happening? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we behaving like this? But it's a matter of everyone is finding an excuse of killing this one, because this one is doing ABC to me. This is my territory. This is everyone is finding an excuse to do something horrible to the next person. So we really have to look. It has to take not the person sitting next to you, not the police, not the president Ramaphosa, but it has to take each and every one of us to say to ourselves, how do we fix this? How do we get this right? How do we get our human relations right?
I think also her question extends to the fact that perhaps Ubuntu is too soft an approach, and it has been, in a sense, the cause of the dispossession and subjugation. I don't know, am I reading you correctly? Is that so? Perhaps as a way of life or as a philosophy, maybe we need to rethink. I don't know how representative of the younger generation is that thought, but anyway, it's an interesting one.
It is.
Yeah, of course.
But we have to really think of ourselves as we are capable of doing that. We have to cite ourselves. I know my young son, talk about the emotional intelligence. That it's difficult to talk about emotional intelligence with someone who's been totally hurt and down in the downtrodden in the gutters. But each and every one of us, one thing that distinguishes us from animals, that we have this thing called a soul. We really have to dig down into our souls and reflect, because we are not. It can't be that the jungle is better than the communities that we live in. There are no bodies in the jungle that we found in the places that we live in. If you do find a body in the jungle, it is a rhino that has been killed by a human being. And if you find a body in the community, it is most likely, or not even more, it is likely that this is a body that has been killed by another human being. What are we becoming?
Thank you. Okay, your question, you directed it at a particular person? Where to from here?
To the panel generally.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Anyone wants to go for that?
Yeah.
Panel? Yeah, where to?
No, we don't have one approach. What they say, an approach a linear approach, an approach that could actually one approach for everything. But we need to have a multi-phased approach in relation to violence. So, for example, on my own case, you know what communities have been fighting before. They're recognizing that fight and violence is something that is not acceptable. How they are raising their own children is different from how they were raised by their own mothers and fathers. So we could really see the change in raising their own children. One of the people who is known as a killer in the area is actually told his own children that the only person who's supposed to have a gun in this family, it's me. You must go to school. Your gun now is supposed to be the pen. You can really see now the change of the language in the community. It's all about the interventions that all of us, I think those interventions are also important. You must also allow the ordinary structures in the communities that have been dealing with peace, that were destroyed by apartheid. The family itself could deal with the issues of violence, so they could talk and resolve some of those issues. But when they are educated, you come with interventions in the community, you come with alternatives to violence, and now should deal with some of these issues. I'm telling you, communities change. So it's important that intervention should go, but they also realize the impact of violence. But sometimes they lack on how the strategies on how to deal with it. But when we come in and assist them, definitely they are going to change. That's why you see that in the communities where there have been violence, communities are beginning to do good things now. They are learning from their own old actions, and they are beginning to actually come up with the development issues that are actually happening and so on. So if we are reimagining peace, we must go to those communities where there is violence and begin a process of engaging them. They must also come with their own strategies of resolving violence, how they imagine peace. Then we can always assist them. They must really travel their own journey in terms of what is it they will see as peace. I asked the question in all these focus groups, and I say, what is it that you want to see happen in the community? People tell me that you want to see development, want to see peace, want to see our children going to school, want to have water, want to have proper transport and so on. You can really see that the vision for peace for them is changed from the previous one. So really, these people want to actually work this. So present alternatives on how they should actually resolve conflicts. Because that's how they've been raised in the past. So I think that's my take.
So if we can perhaps conflate the two, because you asked me, Mbusi, you will have a shot at that.
Yeah, the reimagining peace. Is this one?
And where to?
Okay, I think if we understand that there's a lot of businesses making money because of the chaos, that's because some, like the private company guy, private security guys are striving because their selling point is black people are gonna kill you. So you have to get yourself sheltered, like go live in a complex, 24-hour security, and inside the townships, one of the most successful businesses are the alcohol, the liquor stores. And that's a big part of why we are such a unstable country. So once you understand that trying to achieve peace is gonna hurt someone's pockets, and once you hurt people's pockets, things are gonna go really bad. So yeah, it's really good to try and come up with solutions, but you have to understand that there are so many things in play. It's not just, you should go for counseling and stop hitting your wife or stop killing people. There are people who are benefiting from people being unstable. So yeah, I do, obviously I'm optimistic, that's why I'm here. I do believe that, as you said, like if you change the people closest to you, you can try and change more people, but there are people who are making so much money because we are an unstable country. So we should also understand the money aspects of trying to achieve peace. Like that's why South Africans think we have freedom, but we don't. We know who has the money, so we're not really free.
Yeah.
So the same thing can happen with peace.
Thanks, Mbusi. If that's your shot at optimism, I don't want to hear you pessimistic. Okay. Anyone else wants to go and give us a more hopeful message?
I just want to make a quick comment, which was I also want to throw the challenge back to you young people in this room, especially you guys who are in these educational institutions, because the future is in your hands. The future is in your hands. The current, the day, today is in your hands. Whether if you want to go out and burn the university or burn the library, you are creating chaos for yourselves and for those who are coming behind you. But I want to point out one thing that I noted when I think about the liberation struggle, that there were so many people and so many ideologies, but there is one ideology that they made sure that it doesn't continue. It stopped in its track. It stopped in its tracks and it doesn't move, and nobody was able to pick it up. That was the black consciousness. We know the reason why. Other people were picking up the armed struggle, we can fight them, but this one is going right at the core of how the black person has to think of themselves and the identity. And if this idea gets away and spreads like wildfire, we won't be able to oppress these people. So that is why Steve Biko is like, we're killing this one. Well, we can deal with the others in prison, the others who are taking the armed struggle, we can shoot each other. But this ideology will make sure that it doesn't progress, because it was going right to the core of our being. And I bet with the last button of my shell, if that ideology grew and spread, the black African children would not be where they are today. They would have taken a leap. So think about it.
Good one. Yes, we got other. Okay, so that's one. Yeah, you. 2, 3. And Crispin? Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. I was not going to talk about the reimagining piece, but I just added some stuff here. So I will just mention it and then I'll go to my comment. So what I wanted to say was, reimagining peace for me is one, being honest, and number 2, talking about things. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because there has been initiatives like your reconciliations after 1994, but we're still suffering from, the ill treatment of the Apartheid, even if we're not part of it, since I was born after 1994. But now it just shows how much those initiatives were not successful, because they were meant to what? They were meant to make other people who were part of, affected by the Apartheid to talk about things. And I feel like if they were honest and things were tackled then, maybe even different now. So I feel like we should go back to the drawing board in terms of being honest about what happened and let our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers talk about it. Because even if you mention it, they'll be like, I don't want to talk about it even today. So that was just my comment. So reimagining peace for me will make, or will be to enable our great grandparents to be honest and talk about these things. Okay. Done with that. And my comment was based on Nokuthula talked about how to fix human relations and how to fix gender relations. So my point on violence, regarding violence. So my point was, can't we relook the gender influences on violence? Why am I saying that? I'll just make a practical example on violence between a female and a male. Females have been portrayed or have been known as people who are vulnerable, people who are polite, inferior and stuff. I beg to differ from that. Because now we see women working, we see women driving nice cars and stuff. And you'll find that in a relationship, it's the woman who's abusive. So in my radius, if I were to recall, even in my past relationships, I think maybe I was probably the bully. I was probably the one who was, being abusive to the person that I was dating with. I'll tell him when I want to see him, where and stuff. I'll just make examples in terms of, but often of the times I'll push him. You see, so I feel like like we need to relook into always portraying women as vulnerable, as inferior, because for me, that's not always the case. Sometimes women are the ones who are toxic. And also, sometimes making women vulnerable or making them seem as vulnerable, they are unable to speak out those who are suffering. So my point is, can we relook the gender differences, the power differences on violence? Thank you.
Okay, next was, just hang on, there was someone here.
I'm addressing this to Sam. I salute your courage and your experience. The story of your experience did quite motivate me. To the best of my understanding, international organizations have been around for quite a while, and I'm wondering what if within the time you were subjected to violence, you did take some moves to approach some of these organizations and what their responses or their actions towards helping the situation was. And in addition, I would like to know if, in your opinion, these organizations, I know their objectives over time do change. As far as peace is concerned, in the era where you faced what you've critically analyzed or explained there, were they more receptive to such campaigns as opposed to now, or the case has changed in a positive direction? Or is it all about talk, and talk? Thank you.
I'd like to find some clarity on, or make a comment as a young South African woman, and recently we had the elections, and I found it so difficult to actually pin down the correct leaders to vote for. Because when I look at the leaders that they fought for us to get this democracy that we have, and along the way they dropped the ball. They then started fending for themselves, getting themselves rich, putting themselves first, and forgetting about the black man in the streets. And unfortunately, as the youth, you try to find, okay, so who am I going to go for? Who am I going to support? Because whenever they advocate for themselves, no one is saying we're going to do this and this and this. All they're saying is the other person is doing this, they are wrong. All they do is they attack the other party and not stand on their own. So I find that it's difficult for us as the youth to continue with the whole fighting apartheid thing when our leaders themselves are currently failing us. And the whole black consciousness thing, I believe that the movement to continue to kill the black consciousness, I remember the ANC when it was Uzuma and Julius Malema. The ANC was a great party at that time because they had the ANC followers and they had the youth followers. But because they saw that those two are making such a difference in the country, they found a way to actually break up that relationship and put Julius Malema at a different space, fighting Jacob Zuma, therefore segregating the nation again. So for me, it's how do we then, as the youth, continue to try and fight this? Because as much as we can say, like Mbusi had said, that as much as we can say that we are free, we are not free. We are just still in the same apartheid system, but it's just that now we were given the state, but when we were given the country, it was given to us when all the resources had already been used up. It was given to us when it was already at a bad state. There was so much little to go around that we can't do anything about it. So how do we then, as we try and get that back? How do we try and find solidarity? Because with the amount of parties that we have so many different voting parties, further segregation. How do we then break those down and actually come together as black people and try to actually tumble down the system and build from scratch? Because unfortunately, we will have to start from scratch. We have to lose something to gain something, but people are not realizing that.
Thank you.
I want to take us back to the issue of reimagining peace, because I think we need to listen carefully to this, and I think we should try and avoid getting too caught up in the details of political groupings and so on, frankly, because I think that can distract us from what we're about. And most people here are not South Africans and are not really connecting to that particular issue. Fundamentally, what we're hearing here is that these systems of violence, the systems of social division that are here have been here in South Africa but are not unknown in other parts of the world. There are plenty of examples from people here who've experienced, in some or greater extent, similar patterns of division, exploitation, that these systems operate partly by compelling the collaboration of the people they work against. As of course, and the collaboration of the people who are meant to be the privileged, as Richard was saying, that so for us as white people, it was taken for granted, and we were brought up to treat it as granted that we would be protecting in what was seen as our interests, which was actually the interests of the system of oppression. So, and it did that partly by the many ways in which these ideas, feelings, practices were normalized. We were meant to feel a particular way. We were meant to fear some people, trust some people, mistrust others, believe that some people knew what they were doing. And these go very, very deeply. And the confusion around the liberation was that no attempt was made to recognize that everything was treated at a literal level. If we changed the law, everything else would change. Why would it change unless we were going to address people's emotions, people's memories, people's fears, what violence has done to people? So, and as Mnguni was saying, that there's plenty of things that actually could be done, as long as we understand that this has to involve every kind of institution, from families to local practices that need to be brought back again. The point about black consciousness is that we understand there's a kind of spiritual dimension to this, that we have to address the way people think about themselves and others. And if we don't do that, and this is where it comes to, I think, the purpose of the workshop, if our plans that go forward from this workshop don't address all of these levels, there will simply be a set of, why don't we tell the Commonwealth heads of government they must do this or do that? But we're learning from this that the heads of government will be incapable of doing this because they do not have the power unless people are mobilized around these issues. So it's pointless to put onto some group somewhere else the responsibility for changing this. The key question is, what is the power? And the issue of power has come up in various ways here. What is the power of the people here to make these differences, whether it's in your own country, whether collectively across the Commonwealth and beyond? How does our power then become mobilized to achieve these major issues of developing social cohesion? And that's got to be reflected in what the groups come up with. It cannot be a simple-minded thing of, these are our demands that somebody else must put into operation, while we feel comfortable sitting where we've come from. And having said that, I'm reluctant to report this, but tea is there, and we're going to have to do something about that.
Thanks, Desmond.
So I don't know, maybe we should even individually go get tea, come back while this discussion moves to conclusion.
Yeah, okay, but are you covered? Are you okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. I just want to just take that gendered question. I think it's important, and then we can close up. Are there any other questions? Burning questions after Crispin's guidance and direction? Yeah, you got, okay. Okay, so maybe tea will be a good thing, and then Nokuthula, you can handle that gender question after we bring our tea. So can I ask you then to go out, get your tea, and come back, and then we'll continue the discussion. Okay? Thank you.